So then step 4, actually in between the performance event happens. You got them all prepped up. They go off and do their thing. And this is the critical piece right here. So you've got to then have post-performance reflection and feedback. Okay? You got to have a reflective narrative. Talk through what it is. What were the linguistic objectives fulfilled or not? How did you feel when you were doing it? They're not always the most reliable witness, of course. We're all, I mean, how many times, I don't know if you know how it is, you don't really know what you look like until you're videotaped. So I never watch myself. But I remember once in Argentina, I was actually doing a presentation workshop, pushing the students to work really hard, and don't be nervous, you can get there, and we're filming you, and they finally rebelled. They said, "Oh, okay, Mr. Teacher, you get up there and do that in Spanish." And I'm like, got it. Thought, sure, no problem, you know. And I got up and launched into my Spanish, and of course, as we filmed and we looked at it, I realized I had no idea what I sounded like in Spanish until I'd seen myself in a present mortifying. Okay, I had the most incredibly American accent. I had no idea about that. So the point is that we're not always the best, most objective reporter of our own performance, but it's what we can do. There are times you can get third-party, more objective feedback. It's tough to do. Sometimes, like you were able to, Mark, you can go along to a presentation that your students do, or others of that. In my experience, not all that common. You can do that. So it's a reflective narrative by the learner, and it's critical for the learner to do this because of this, fomenting autonomy. So were the objectives achieved? And here's the key thing: the results of that feed back into this loop. Okay, it feeds back into this performance loop. So it would go back into the next stage of this process where the students' on-the-job performance drives the way we teach. And the 4-stage process looks like this. So again, this is just a overview. We select the event, we define the message, plan, resource, teach, post-performance reflection. You just keep going around like this. This is going to add to influence the messages that are defined here as you go around. So we want to keep it going. And as this circle progresses, and these might be 2-week iterations, they might be month iterations, it all depends, we end up with what we call the emergent syllabus. Okay, this is a syllabus that's not defined by a needs assessment done 6 months ago. It's not defined by the scope and sequence of a table of contents in the first part of the course book. What it's defined by is the actual performance needs of each student. So they look like these tightly wound spirals, just like this. This is the home page for a student. I just want to show you a couple things that we do on here. First of all, front and center is a list of what their needs are. Okay, now I would just go, oh, needs assessment. Well, it's not. Of course, we need to do needs assessment. We need to have a context from which we exploit the more granular performance-based teaching. But what you can easily do here, I don't know if you can see that. Well, I could go back. Back one. No, one after that. There.
Okay.
You can easily add very quick.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. You can add very quickly, for example, a performance event. Okay. So here you have conference call November 29th. And then you can add, once you've decided on the messages, you or your student just add in here. In fact, this is a student, but he's modeled after a real student who's is not named Gabriel. He's in Paris, and he does tourism and like wine tours and stuff. Great job. But one of the things he has to do is describing. I mean, just use this as an example. Okay, so this is his performance event. We know he needs this for the tour that he's going to be doing with a big group of I think it was Germans actually when we were talking to him. So this is one way we connect it. Another way is by actually putting the performance event in his calendar. And you can put the performance event in his calendar. This says conference call. Okay, so that's the example performance event we're talking about. Then you can associate material with it. I'm going to show you how you find material to associate with. Also, he has his own library where he can upload all that student-driven material that we all acknowledge is the key to what we need to do here. Okay, next one. And this is just now showing you how you find content to help you help Gabriel in this case, we talked about, the fact that he needs to be able to describe these wines. And so, in the restaurants and the sort of gastronomic tours that he does. And so in this needs cloud, this kind of set of needs that we had there in the homepage, if you click on describing, next one, Carl, you click on that need, and it's going to open up a search box that will let you search in the entire repository. Now we've got, I think, 4,000 pages of content in here from 41 different books. And so all of that content is tagged. It's all described with a description word. So once you've identified that Gabriel needs to do this, we can automatically search in courses or resources or loose content for anything that's tagged describing. You can also search for his level as well. Next slide, Carl. Sorry. When you click on the search engine result comes up. And so here you can see the search results for describing. These are actually from a hospitality industry book that Cambridge publishes, excellent book called Be My Guest. And these are just the first two that came up just by coincidence. So if we would then select one, next slide, inside there, I think it was language focus and practice, we would have ... looks like this, okay, describing food. So this is just this content from Be My Guest, okay. Now, so you can see here, we've got functional language on descriptions. In this case, we're talking about describing food. This is from Business Benchmark, not from Be My Guest. That's another business English course book that we have in English 360. Next slide, Carl. So once you've identified that you want this page, okay, and you can just copy it. Copy this page too. You're going to copy into Gabriel's library, or you can copy it into some course that you made anyway for Gabriel. Next one. And you've got that content that you've pulled out in an emergent way from what his performance needs are. Now, the second thing you can do, just quickly going through this is just it has a lot of pips. Ugo would wonder about pips and pom-poms at this point, I'm sure. But at the bottom of each page of content, if you are the teacher and have the authoring rights, you have a nice little authoring pane here where you can create content on your own. You can link it to authentic material. You can use content that Gabriel has given you that he's put up in his library and exploit that for the rich language that's actually the language he has to produce in the performance event. You can also link any of this content by creating a performance event and link this page to an existing event here. Next slide. Go ahead. So, in conclusion, this is an example of how we can exploit authentic content on the web. The web is the richest source of content that we can possibly imagine, second to our students, but man, everything's out. The problem is we can't use it legally when it comes to e-learning. You can't just take something from the D and then put it on an online platform and deliver it to students. So what we've done is we've made a nice little piece here where this is, believe it or not, this was authored by Carl. I forgot this is your stuff. You remember this? Okay, so Carl found a video of Steve Jobs, okay, on the web that he wanted to use for language teaching purposes. You can't call Apple, as you know, and say, can I use your video? Because they're not going to let you do it. So what we have here is a nice little open window thing. Next slide, Carl, where you save the video. The student presses the button. Here's the exercise they do to exploit the video. But the video pops open in a brand new window. And because it's a new window, it doesn't violate the copyright. Okay, so because it's just like a hyperlink on the web. So the web's open for that. That's the whole point of the web. So as long as we emancipate ourselves from the publisher-driven need to embed things on a page and just say the web is about linking, then we can use the web for authentic content. Now, what you can't do is take something and copy and paste it, make a gap fill. You can't copy and paste in, but you can always link out. I'm going to go. This part I talked about while we were waiting. So Carl, if you could go there.
Fine.
Okay. These were the slides that I talked about while we were waiting for the slides that weren't there. Okay. I think I could, oh, there we go. Okay, one more. So, conclusion, stakeholder benefits. 3 slides. I want to talk about what the benefits are. Higher return on investment all the way around. Next slide. What are the benefits for students? Okay. First of all, obviously, engagement, motivation, learning. One of the issues that I always had as a teacher was students saying, well, I mean, we were talking about the attendance issue. They're busy. So this, I've got to go to English class is always a challenge for them. By using performance-based training, it's really not that they're going to English class. They're doing their job. So that we don't have this bifurcation between kind of teaching like I was 8 years old, you know, and doing work, you know. So you know, we avoid this completely. It really ties in very nicely. And of course, their performance is going to improve. If we work with them, you know, it's going to be better, and that's a great thing. Next slide. Benefits for teachers and benefits for schools. First, our tools work better. And that sort of gap fill that I was, you know, complaining about, the page 72 of some book, number 8. When it's decontextualized, it doesn't have much meaning. It's not good second language acquisition material. If you contextualize that in the message that they've got to come up with in 3 weeks to get that deal, it has a whole different level of meaning. And that dry, artificial gap fill suddenly springs to life. That may be an overstatement, okay? But it's better than it would have been otherwise. Okay? It's also a tremendous differentiation in the market. You go to corporate training managers and you say every single thing that we do in our performance-based training helps your people do their job better. That's a message they don't hear all the time. You can show that direct result, that direct impact on having the company run effectively, making the bottom line. Success here is not like in the classroom as much as it's in the boardroom. So, you know, we want to look at this as a way for us to, because we're all professional, we need to sell our services. Next slide, Carl. And this is personal. It's just fun. Okay? I just think it's a lot of fun to actually work with reality. And performance-based training helps us do that. Last slide. Benefits for customers and training departments. This is the message we give our training managers. Okay? We go to them and we're saying everything that we're doing is focused on making your business better. Okay? We are not just doing page 72 of this gap fill. We are doing this because your salespeople have to sell in that conference in 3 weeks. They want to hear. So it's directly targeted on that. It's another tool in their training portfolio because this is this mix. I think, Mark, you called it, was it fusion training? What was it? Yeah. It's this fusion of the traditional ELT profession together with, you know, the soft skills consulting, the communication training. If you're Mark Ibben in the back, you can also help them with the engineering piece. You know, so you know, for these training managers, it's a distinct thing. And obviously, training managers, human resource people, they're like everybody else. They want their boss to be happy with them. Okay, and you make those nice charts, like I said, the documentation. They take that in. They show how their training investment actually has a tangible metric involved with it. Now, of course, it's not necessarily objective, but the fact is, upper management understands that. That's what upper management is there to do. Next slide. Luckily, we're now at questions and discussion. I don't think we have time for questions and discussion so much, but I will be here for the rest of the conference. I'll probably be downstairs hanging around the stand a little bit or wandering around. If anybody happens to see me meandering through the hallway, feel free to stop and ask any questions. Okay, thank you very much.